Thanks for tuning in to the Just Go Play podcast, where we look to develop and promote a positive youth sports experience. As always, we are available for speaking and private engagements and can be reached at info@justgoplay.ca. You can also catch full video versions of our podcast on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to visit us at justgoplay.ca. Enjoy the episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Just Go Play podcast. I'm your host, Coach D, also known as Daryl Devonish. I'm here with my co-host, Taryn Lipschitz. And today we got a special guest. And I know you guys always say that, but anybody who comes on this program is special because we make sure we get the guys in the communities, in the country that are making things happen. Today we're with Dr. Cassidy Preston, former pro hockey player, performance coach. You know, I met Cassidy a couple months ago at on a panel. We were talking to our old high school, St. Michael's. And I gotta always give a plug to St. Michael's every chance I get. And he was on and he had some awesome responses, and I loved how he handled himself. And I said, we got to get this guy on the podcast. So we have him on today. He's going to be talking about mental performance coaching and what he's doing in the community. T, how you doing? I can't ignore you. How you doing?
Hey, Daryl, I'm great. And Cassidy, I'm so excited to have you on today. I think with everything that's been happening in the world in the past year and a half, this is such a topic that's at the forefront, speaking about mental health, speaking about mental performance. So welcome. So excited to have you and can't wait to hear from you today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was great meeting Coach Daryl, the St. Mike's alumni, and we hit it off then. I'm looking forward. We'll dive into some good topics today.
Oh yeah, we're diving right in. Today's gonna be real talk now. So tell us how you became a mental performance coach and give us a little bit of your backstory, because I'm not sure everybody knows what that is. But let's give the audience where you're coming from here.
Yeah, so I got into the mental side of the game right when I was about 16. So as soon as I jumped from minor hockey to junior hockey, I actually started working with a sports psychologist myself. And that's where I really got interested, found the benefits of doing it. But I also came into this role because of how much I struggled with the mental side of the game throughout my junior career, a little bit of pro and university career. And so that's what led me to go to do the schooling that I did. And it's kind of like this mix of, applying stuff myself and then doing it through school, and then now doing it full time with athletes. And right from when I was like even 19, doing hockey training in my hometown, North Bay, I would call it complete hockey training back then. And it was like, we wanted the mental part to be part of it. We didn't want to work on people's other skills without working on their mindset. So I've been, in the field for a long time in that sense, but then I, while I was doing my Ph.D, I started doing more and more of that work. So that's kind of how I came about it. And one of the ways that I kind of articulate what it is that we do, a nice little analogy is like, you've got the car and you got the driver. You're a race car, you got to work on the car. Your car's got to be fast, has to have the skills and the handling. But what about the driver? A good driver that's focused and in the right mindset and confident, willing to take risks, not playing too safe and scared or hesitant. You need both. And so I work on the driver, not the car, right? And a lot of athletes got great cars, but the driver's not in the right headspace and not able to focus. So that's a nice analogy for what we do.
I love that analogy. I gotta use that. I'll give you credit. Don't worry.
Thank you. Yeah, I came up with that one only a couple of weeks ago. We've used the other ones, but that's the best one we got right now.
Solid. I see it. I'm like, yeah. Get it. Yeah. If you didn't get it before, now you know.
Yeah. And a nice way to maybe dovetail on that, which is really common way to think about it, is like, why spend so much time and energy working on the car if you're not also going to invest in the driver? And the difference is usually way more obvious what the car is, what your physical and your technical skills are, but what is your mindset and your mental skills, and how do you work on that? And so that's, we use assessments and strategies that to break that down. But yeah, it's a big area of the game that's it's growing, right? You talk about mental health, mental well-being. That tide's coming right now, and more and more people are jumping on that, and it's an enjoyable field for me to work in because my own personal struggles with it, not just in sport, but even in my personal life, right? So I'm sure we'll dive into some of those as we go.
And
That's awesome.
Cassidy, I think it's so important that we're talking about this because, not a lot of people, like you said, have necessarily talked about the mental aspect and focusing on the driver, and they've really focused on the car, the technical, the tactical. Are they getting faster? Are they getting more goals? So I love that you're doing this. And I really would like to know too, do you feel like the pandemic has shone light on the mental state of, in this case, we're talking about athletes, and I know and I don't want to talk about just general population, but specifically athletes. Do you think that the pandemic's maybe made your job even more in demand?
Yeah, for sure. I think the awareness around mental health, like, Bell Let's Talk Day as an example, has just been pushing and growing and growing, at least in Canada. I think the Americans are like, what's Bell Let's Talk Day? I was like, what? It's like, not everybody knew about what it was. But so there's this growing awareness of it. There's Sportsnet did a good series this year about mental health and well-being. And and with this pandemic, like, athletes are stressed. Like, what I work on is not just mental performance, it's overall well-being and your mindset around it. These are life skills that apply with, like, how you deal with stress, not just in sport but in school and other areas of your life, and carry forward into the workplace. And so a lot of people do recognize that, and it's growing, and especially now as this sport starts to return. And we're in Ontario here. Hopefully we'll be open soon. But like, people are stressed, anxious about returning. So no, it's definitely grown. And for me personally, it's been an interesting year because like, sports stopped, and I was like, who wants to work on their mindset about performance when there's no sport? So I had to make a lot of shifts, pivot. We have a lot of Americans who work now. The cool thing out of this is way more stuff online that we can do. We've made a lot of pivots. So I've got athletes all over the world and stuff that we work with. So there's definitely a trend going. So that's a good point.
And I want to say this. I feel like it's not so taboo to talk about these things anymore. When I was growing up, back to your analogy, I had a good car, but the driver was shady, right? So like, I needed support. Don't laugh, T. But that's what I wish I had, a guy like you that I could talk to, because my parents didn't know. I didn't know what to say to my parents. I couldn't relate to my parents. People didn't talk to you, or you didn't show weakness, because that was like, man, you don't show your weakness. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You give the enemy, or like, you give someone a reason to cut you. Like, you didn't talk about that. Like, I'm sure you deal with these issues too, because there's people that are silent, suffering in silence, and someone's got to. It's okay now to say, hey, I got a guy you need to talk to.
Yeah, no, that's especially because I'm very hockey centric often. Like, I work outside of hockey, but like, hockey's a pretty slow, adapting sport in a lot of ways. And versus, like, maybe baseball, it's like highly embraced in baseball. And golf is pretty highly embraced. But then hockey, it's like, yeah, like you said, it's like, oh, they're almost tabooed, and oh, that's a weak thing. Whereas, what we do know about our mindset and well-being and trust and things is, like, it takes strength to be vulnerable and ask for help. Like, you want to be an athlete, and it's like, oh no, I can work on my car by myself. I don't need a coach to help me do this. I'm just going to do it. Like, no, why would you do that on your car and you're not? And then why would you do that on your mindset and your well-being? Why not get a support team, right? The best athletes have amazing support teams. And it's not just, working on the car, but it's their social support teams. It's their family, their friends, their mental performance coaches, etc. And that's what gives them so much stability and consistency on that ability to perform. So those are, different ways of thinking about. One of the funny analogies or concepts that I think is important too, with, like, Bell Let's Talk Day and, like, mental health versus mental performance, because they're different, but they're related. And because, like, I'm not a mental health therapist or psychologist, and I can't treat, diagnose, or deal with mental illness, right? Like, that's not what I went to school for. It's related, but it's definitely not that, in a sense. But it's part of the problem then becomes this dichotomy: is you're either mentally ill or mentally well. It's like, that's not really how it works. It's not like, oh, you've crossed the line and now you're mentally broken or ill or bad. Oh, and you are on the other line and you're good. Like, and it's like, there's a spectrum and a continuum. It's like, how often, how frequent, how intense do we get down on ourselves? Because everybody gets down, sad, frustrated, worried. The question is, to what degree, what frequency, what severity. And that's, what our mindset's all about. And so I work on more of like a good to great kind of spectrum, but these are just life skills, and the same tactics apply around. And so when we're thinking about what's taboo and this willingness to open up, it's like, let's be proactive. Right? I talk about our businesses. We'd rather stop people from falling into the river than trying to get them out of the river, and they're like, where they're already, sinking. And so, that's what we're doing with our mindset, or anything else that you're doing in life. Being proactive is very, very important. And it's also just continue to grow awareness and what are the strategies and what works. And I'm sure we'll dive into other big concepts here, but it's a big field right now.
This is what we want the audience to hear. And that brings us into the next question. How do you get these clients to open up to you? Like,
yeah, it's a great question. So it's not easy. It depends on the age and who you're with. One of the unique concepts, I got this from one of my mentors, Todd Herman. You can actually build trust quickly. There's kind of this belief that it takes for a long time to build trust, which is generally true. But trust can be acquired quickly. If you're truly vulnerable, open, and honest, and connecting with somebody, and you really serve them, you can build trust with somebody fairly quickly. And it doesn't mean like 5 minutes quickly, but like, 30 minutes, an hour, a couple hours, you can build significant trust with somebody if you're having the right type of conversation in the right way. Now, I've had conversations with people where it's just like they're closed and there's no priming that door open. Like it's, my job, I frame myself as a coach or a guide, right? So like I don't change somebody, right? I ask questions and reflect and guide them. They have to be willing to reflect and engage and reciprocate to grow and learn and transform. And so it's not like I can just push them. It's just like metaphorically push them and then they shift their mindset. I'm kind of guiding them, but if they don't open up and aren't willing to share and engage, because trust is kind of a two-way street that way. So like the question was how. So it's sharing my own vulnerability, struggles, creating a non-judgmental space is really important, where it's like, and I can do that fairly well, because I was like, yeah, I was like you said, my driver was not great. Like I've been there beating myself up, like, yep, this is normal. Like, and I work with tons and tons of athletes. I'm like, yep, that's normal. Like normalizing it, like it's a cultural thing. A lot of us don't have great drivers in a lot of ways. There's a lot of noise, foggy vision, cannot focus on the process, and, doubting yourself and worries there. Playing hesitant and safe. So, so then it's normalizing it, connecting with them on that, creating it's like, hey, this is okay. This is just where we are. It's not good or bad. And where do we want to go? And then relating to them, give them strategies like, oh, I can see how this works, and presenting things in new ways that they haven't thought of before. It's like, oh, and the things start to click. And so, but if they don't go out and apply it, and they're not willing to have the conversation, not really, because we could talk and I could not listen. If I was like, you're talking, I'm here, I'm listening, but I ain't listening, right? So there's a wall up. And so at the end of the day, it's trying to break those walls down. But then, if they're going to keep their wall up, they're going to keep the wall up. But that for me, and usually people won't come in and I won't actually talk to them if that's going to be the case anyways. We have a kind of a filtering process, so I don't waste my time. But that's great. That's not an easy answer. So not an easy, an easy question, not an easy answer.
I don't think you could have answered that any better. That's awesome.
And I think, Cassidy, it's great because I think, bringing up stonewalling, it isn't something that blocks people from actually willing to listen and be part of it and work on themselves. I think what's really interesting is, like you mentioned, in specifically to hockey, it's a bit of a taboo subject, being weak or being seen as vulnerable. So it is amazing that you're appealing to people and saying it isn't about being weak. It's about actually just working on yourself and going, like you said, from good to great and normalizing some of those tougher moments. I'm curious too, it sounds like you're working with a lot of athletes who have been playing for a while. Do you also work with younger age groups? And I guess my second part of that is, what age should kids be exposed to some of this work that you're doing? Because like you mentioned earlier, it's life skills, not just sports skills.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we get that quite a bit, because there's definitely some younger athletes that have got some mental blocks and they've got some limiting beliefs that are hurting them then. And it's just kind of like the parents don't know how to deal with it and aren't giving them the tools and strategies. So the way that I answer that it's more to do with maturity than age, right? Because there's some 11-year-olds that are crazy mature, and I've worked with some 13, 14-year-olds that are pretty immature. So it's almost like the same thing working with some of those. And then obviously there's like 10-year-olds that are really immature, and it's like hard to work with. So maturity has a huge bigger factor than anything. But working within the parent, I've worked with some younger athletes, and then the parent is so important to that process, because they're still the major influencer in that person's life. And so if the parent's not saying the right things, or they're kind of counteracting anything I tell the athlete, it's just washing it out to see, kind of thing. So a lot of time, like if I did a 30-minute session, I'd be like 15, 20 minutes with the athlete, and then I'm like just recapping everything, going a little deeper with the parent for 10 minutes at the end, so they can kind of readdress it throughout the week. So that'd be the way that I would frame that in terms of like what age. I like, obviously there is too young, and we're doing some more like kind of eventually parent education stuff, like our parent programs, where parents come in and do a little workshop series on like how to then apply this to their kid without ever really having to hire us to work with them one-on-one or in our groups. Because it's definitely applicable for that 11, 12 younger. A lot of athletes, it's just not the same. Now, what I do preface, which is kind of what I think you're alluding to, is like, well, if you start doing it at 11 and it catches on, and by the time you're 13, you're way ahead of everybody. And because then it's like you're just being that much more proactive. So I think parents have a huge factor to it. Coaches have a huge factor. We're doing way more coach impact stuff. So what are the coaches teaching these kids at 11 or at 8, 9, 7, 8, 10, 11, right? What are the parents teaching them? A lot of them, they're teaching them our cultural society norms, are teaching us the wrong mindset, that's fixed, judgmental, all about outcomes and results and comparison in an unhelpful way. And it's not by intentionally they're doing it wrong. It's like, it's just a cultural norm. So I'd preface it that way. I've got a really cool analogy though that I like sharing. There's a new one recently we started doing with a lot of our athletes. And you talk about the mental blocks or the wall that kind of comes up. And so you think of it, and there's a good story about an elephant attached to a rope and with a stick in the ground, and the elephant won't leave. It's like, why won't the elephant leave? Well, it's because when it was a baby, it was attached to that same rope and stick. And so it couldn't leave. And then so as it grow older, it just thought it couldn't push that. It doesn't try to break it anymore. And so what do? Do I push the elephant and break the rope? No, I can't. Right? The elephant's too big, but I can guide and let it see that it's actually, oh, you can actually break through this rope. And so, but again, they have to be willing to listen to me and look, and then they still have to want to take the step forward. If I push them too hard, there's no push back, right? And so it's a good analogy when you think about breaking through, mental barriers and walls and growing, is that elephant in the rope, because we all have got our own, limiting beliefs and little ropes, which one's holding you back right now. So my job's kind of to go find that, show you, push you, nudge you, but I can't completely push you all the way to break it.
I love it. I feel like you're giving these young kids strategies to deal with stressful situations, because that's what I think a lot of times from the kids I work with. Once they have a few strategies, like now it's not like something goes wrong and they don't know how to deal with it. It's something goes wrong. What do I gotta do? I gotta breathe. I gotta, whatever strategy you gave them, what I gotta, what's the mind, what I have to do with my body language, what I have to do with my mind. So that's where I think someone at a young age talking to you would be awesome. It would be awesome to give them strategies, because that's what I think these coaches, the kids, the parents, they don't have strategies. So, and which strategy works best with them. Right. So that's the next thing. So on that note, you say you work with groups. I just wanted to ask, like, how do you find working with groups? Is it as effective as working one-on-one, or is like?
Yeah, we're early days relative in group. I think group's going to become massive is my goal and hope. And I think it should, and I think it can be better than one-on-one coaching in a sense. We're not quite there yet. A lot of people don't want to join the group. So we got a lot of one-on-one coaching. And one-on-one coaching is obviously like, you're just going to get that level, like, well, I'm going to poke. We're going to find what your rope is, right? Help you work on your specific driver, and is really personalized. So like, it's just always hard to get that in a group. But the more you refine a group and the bigger it grows, and you shape it the right ways, and you have different best practices within a group, it's group learning, and you see somebody else working on theirs, and you're reflecting and growing and learning. It normalizes. You can get way more repetition in, right? Like, to get in touch with me weekly is like, very expensive, but to get in touch with me weekly through our group is much more reasonable. And it gives you that repetition. And we have a lot of people that do a one-on-one program, and then they just stay in the group after, because they've got enough of that, the personalized part. Now it's just like, I want the repetition. So to me, it depends. Obviously, we got a lot of athletes that then will sign up initially with both, right? A bit of both, a one-on-one and a little bit of the group. And so, but like I said, my vision in long term, like, we want to have lots of big groups and that impact and cultural shift and creating these norms. And, group coaching can be more effective because it's like the group's starting to answer their own questions, and they're creating bonds and community and collaboration that way. And so it becomes the norm, right? Like, how much can I impact working just one-on-one, right? And what's the ripple effect of that? Like, there is. I'm not against it. It's just, but I think group is a very powerful tool. And obviously we package our programs and include both for many athletes will choose that.
And I like what you said, because I'm sitting in a group, and all of a sudden I didn't realize there was 3 other guys in the group or people in the group that had the same problem as me. And I was like, man, I experienced that too. So you don't feel all alone, and it's way more now. I can talk about it because I'm not the only one.
Exactly.
And I love it too, because I think with the group, Cassidy, as well, you're also bringing the coaches in and the parents. And, as you talk about not moving away from one-on-one, but offering more product offerings, how are you working with the coaches to help them then work with the athletes? Because now you're asking the coach to be the coach and be not just the physical coach, but the mental coach, and a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, and that's a big thing I've done for a while, but especially in the last year, that's really started to evolve and shift, is way more working with coaches and educating coaches and providing resources for them. Because, I help one coach, I help 17 athletes in a way. Like, it's like, but it's hard. Like, my PhD was probably more to do with the psychology of coaching than the psychology of an athlete, right? I really centralized around actually coaching and the psychology. And we've got a podcast and a workshop now, and we're working closely and sponsored by the coaches site. So they have all these coaches. This is Beyond the X and O's monthly workshops. And that's exactly what we're doing. And we do, like this last week, we did transformational leadership was the topic, reflecting on their values, their why, their process, and what's their standard of behaviors as a coach, and what's their vision. So, and then they can do that with their teams. And so, those are things that we're doing more and more, but it's not easy. It's not easy. Like, hey, coaches, come listen to me. Like, coaches can be like, not always the easiest to, get in front of. Like, there's so much noise, but the way that we articulate it, and there's this, I think, a huge trend coming. They'd love this Beyond the X and O's, the soft skills, the leadership. They know how valuable it is. And that's a huge difference maker. And there's this thirst for it, because most coach education, all about the X's and O's. And that's not what makes your best coaches the best, and the worst. It's the interpersonal skills, the communication, the leadership. And so we're doing a lot more in that. I got, it's not confirmed yet, but in August, I'll likely be doing a mental toughness playbook for coaches. So it's just like, this whole, like, how to, the playbook on how to work on your athlete's mindset and mental toughness, kind of like mental game speech in a box. It's going to be pretty cool. So that's something that's coming down the line that we'll be doing. And this is now going to be like an ongoing, never ending thing. This is constant coaching community that we have, that we hope to keep growing and giving them that support. Because and there's a lot of other ways to highlight this, but some of the best things about coach education is it should not be, oh, you're trained and now you're done. You're a coach. It's a never ending process of learning and engagement and reflection. So that's what this group's about. And then 2 is the communities of practice concept. It's not like they come and I'm just like, I know everything about coaching and listen to me. No. Like, I'm very educated and know a lot about the psychology of coaching, but the collective group has more. So it's a ton about other great coaches sharing, breakout rooms, interact and share and engage, versus it being lecture based. So and we've got a really good uptake initially on that. So that's there's a bit of a self plug in a way, but but that's what I'm doing. And I feel like it's having a really good impact, and we've got really positive feedback on it from the initial stuff that we've done in the last year. So
I love it. On that coaches topic, are you finding that coaches are starting to realize that they can't coach the way they used to coach to get the
big time
results? Because there's some guys that are like, still, they had success and they're like, I've had a lot of success, my ways work. And now they're starting to say, geez, why aren't my old tricks working anymore with these kids? Are you finding that coaches are admitting that, or like opening up to,
for sure. Like, I don't know if admitting is always the best word, but I definitely, they're realizing it for sure. And I think the athletes are becoming that much kind of more intuitive. They're sharper in a ways. The way they pick up, their standards are going higher and higher. Somebody said it great before. It's like, well, now coaches like, now we have to be respectful and do things this way. And it's like, that's how you should treat any human. Like, it's just like, you just got to used to be able to get the way to treat humans poorly, and it just became the normal of what coaching was. That should never been any normal practice, right? So their coaching in a way is just kind of following up to fundamental communication, human principles in sense, and it's all this power dynamics. And so coaches are definitely kind of catching on, and then they see the differences, and they just know it's just not working. They know their athletes are disengaging, shutting down, right? Like, in the way athletes are parented, what they know is what's fair and respectful and what's not, they make a stand, right? 20 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, it's like, you just deal with it. Like, it was one of my big master's research. It was a societal norm where it's like, you needed to take on that emotional abuse to get to the higher levels. That's what you kind of went through. It was like, that's what it took. And it's like, oh yeah, this is just what's the normal. You need coaches to scream and yell and to belittle you to get to the next level. You just do what they say. And there's, maybe wait a second here. Maybe there's a different way. And, someone like John Wooden was way above the curve. And you see, and any kind of really successful coaches are really, Steve Kerr, John Cooper, Paul Maurice, like, these guys are very different in their approach and have got significantly different results. We even had on our podcast, Michael Dalzotto, who played for John Tortorella. So John Tortorella is, pretty known as a pretty dictator type coach. He played for him like 10, 15 years ago when he was like that. And he commented on how much he shifted. Obviously, some things that should stay the same and his values and standards, but the way he relates and understands and communicates has shifted. And so, he's, so he spoke to him that way, but obviously, maybe not everything shifted. And it was just one interview we did with him. But the point being, there's been a major change in the standards of coaching, and coaches realizing that, and then not knowing where to, to work on these skills. And the same is actually, to a degree, applied in business, right? Like, a lot of people that are managers that they're just managing, but not coaching and not connecting and leading. And there's a lot of, growth in that over the last couple of decades. And so a lot of what we do kind of stems, and obviously transformational leadership literally comes from the business sector. It's being applied to sport now.
I love that. And I think it's really interesting that you brought it up as well, that coaches, a lot of them coach the way they were coached. And they're now realizing that's not necessarily the best way to move forward in their coaching, and they need to learn to develop their own coaching style that's best for them and their athletes. I'd be curious too, Cassidy, what else do you think are some of the bigger challenges that young athletes are facing? And I know we've touched a little bit on being able to express themselves and, normalize what that spectrum is on how they're feeling. So what else do you think are their big challenges?
Probably the biggest root, which pretty much any kind of personal problems can always stem back to this, but like self-worth. So self-confidence, self-worth is a foundational pillar or foundation which grows your ability to embrace, take on challenges, be confident, learn. And there's often a self-worth problem because they're attaching their self-worth to what other people think, and letting other people define, or results define their self-worth. And they don't learn to own, who they are and their own self-worth, and that it becomes dependent on all these external things. And so therefore they feel like they're not worthy in ways. And even if it's just a little bit, and just a little bit of discouragement, a little bit of lack of self-worth, we talk about, it's the roots of the tree become shaky, and the whole tree gets shaky. And we have this whole analogy around a confidence tree. And self-worth is the roots. So that's probably one of the biggest ones. And then kind of like what goes hand in hand with that is then worrying about what other people think. It's like our society is crazy worried about what other people think. And it's only getting heightened more with social media, etc. And they're posting comments, all that kind of stuff. So, and again, that, links back to this self-worth foundational issue. If you feel like your self-worth is dependent on what other people think of you, then you're just running around worried and scared about what other people think and trying to please others instead of doing what you think is meaningful and valuable, and living in congruence with your own values. So that's a big one, but I'd be happy to go deeper into that if we want. But I think that touches on it.
And I think on that self-worth, I think parents have a little bit of problems with that, because they start like, their kid's not good at something, and they start like, dude, you're represented, you know what I mean? So they feel that pressure, and it's, I've had to calm some parents down and say, hey man, just let him play, let him be good, let him be good on his own time. So in sort of going along with that question, typically how long does it take to see changes or results when you start seeing a client? I know that's not an easy question, because it means really it's like depends.
Yeah, no, for sure. But we generally, I would say within, if we're meeting weekly for the first month or so, usually within a couple weeks. I chat with somebody once and it was like, literally, the mom texted me like, what'd you say to my kid? Like, it was like the next day, like, because they break through a wall. But so usually within a couple of weeks to a month, they've made significant change, right? There's been a shift in growth if they're engaged in doing the work. It's usually within a month. But I've also done that where it's like you do one or a couple and they make a significant shift. And if they stop doing the work, they will likely regress back, because our mindset is a habit. Just like any skill that we work on, it's a habit with how we think and process and our belief system. And so we want to really root it and ingrain it. And so that's why a lot of our programs, they're not 1 month long. They're 3 months, 6 months, a lot of people 12 months, because we want to, get through that first month. Then we want to refine, get it even higher. And then we want to sustain and maintain the habits and ingrain the habits, and new things come up, and learning to adapt and take ownership of their mindset and the strategies. So yeah, I would say usually within a month, there's been significant impact where they're now really bought in. It's like, yeah, this works. But then it's like, how do I keep getting it to work? How could I get it to work a little bit better and keep growing? But yeah, it's generally get pretty good results because of how messed up our society is in some ways, right? So it's like, oh yeah, show them a couple new things. They're like, wow, didn't think of that way before. Really, we talk a lot about like the dark cloud lifts, the chain, they're out of the quicksand, because before they're kind of stuck. And there's a lot of like that white, the rope attached around the elephant's leg, and they break free. So there is a early on significant, but it doesn't mean that it's long lasting yet. So.
And I always, as you're talking, I keep having this visual of a toolbox, and, kids are born and you get a toolbox, and some kids walk around and first you're just walking around with a hammer and just hitting things and learning what things are. And then what you're basically doing is helping them build that toolbox with, now you've got a screwdriver, now you've got a drill, now you've got all these other things. And, what you mentioned, it's, if they don't keep working on it, if they give out their tools, they're going to lose them or not get them back. Their toolbox will be empty again. So
yeah,
I think it's just so critical that parents, coaches, and athletes are listening. And before, we always wrap up with first next steps. But before we do that, Cassidy, how can people get a hold of you, and tell them again what the name of your podcast is, because you do have so many great resources out there for them to start tapping into.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So my main business is called Consistent Elite Performance. And so that's consistentlyperformance.com. We actually have 2 podcasts. We've been doing more on the coaching side. It's called the Beyond the X's and O's podcast. So that's the leadership more for coaches. And then there's just the Consistently Performance podcast, where I've interviewed athletes and people about more athlete mindset. So And so anyways, I'm not a massive podcast person by any means. So I'm just kind of like sort of dabbling in it because of the pandemic, more or less. But so those are those resources on our website. There's we also have a YouTube page. We have blogs and stuff where we post. We have some other free stuff on there. And then we have our programs that you can reach out and apply for free one-on-one sessions and stuff. So for intro sessions. So yeah, no, I think that that speaks to it. And I already mentioned some of the coaching stuff that I'm doing for any coaches out there. So you can find that on the website too. So most of the stuff's on the website.
So for next steps, what advice would you give parents who have kids that are suffering from whatever, a mental block, or like what advice, give one or two things that you can say to these parents, kind of to finish up with our first steps.
Yeah, no, that's obviously the answer depends, but I think the first thing is just normalizing the ability to reflect and think about their mindset. And so a couple things that I would say around that would be, first, like, use that analogy, even the car and the driver. Like, let's stop talking about the car. This is not a car issue. This is a driver concept how can we improve the driver? And so some of those subcomponents of the driver, the main one being the zone. How much are I just in the zone, trusting myself, flow state, present, versus distracted, hesitant, doubting myself, and worried? And then you can break it down, and we have our online assessment, but it breaks it down into confidence, focus, composure, resiliency, and kind of assess, okay, well, what part of the driver do we got to work on here? And that can learn and grow. And then one of the cool ways to think about it is, a lot of people really confuse our belief system, our thoughts, versus emotions, and kind of give really bad advice. So stop giving bad advice, which would be like, don't worry about it. Just be confident. Like it doesn't work that way. Like, if it worked that way, then just everyone would be confident and stop worrying. So why are we worrying? Where is the doubt coming from? Right? I've had OHL coaches tell players that, like, you just got to be more confident. Oh, okay. Look, well, if you said so, now I'll just be confident. Right? So what's the emotions there? Those feelings are a feedback mechanism to actually the underlying thoughts or beliefs. And so when I split it up, there's the thoughts can be limiting beliefs, which is like 2 + 2 = 5. It isn't true, but you start to think it's true. Like, I have to be perfect. I got to please other people. That's that white rope that's attached to the elephant's leg, holding it back, attached to a stick. And so the goal is not to just be confident. It's to go to the root, belief system, understanding the thoughts and the emotions and what they mean, and then finding the truth and perspective and being able to reset. And because a lot of times it's just you're narrowed in on something, like how much this sucks, and what you're hating about it, or you're judging it as so bad. And when you zoom out, you can get perspective, and you can see that these are just thoughts that are not true, but we're holding on to. And therefore, what is the truth? And a better perspective, which allows us to get calm, centered, confident, right? Not that you're the best athlete in the world, because that's a limiting belief in itself. Oh, confident means I'm the best ever. No, it doesn't. Like, confidence is about having certainty in who you are and your self-worth, which is a basic human principle and truth that a lot of us lose sight of. And so the feedback there was kind of two-pronged. I'll wrap it up because it kind of got a little winded, but it was first, we're following, right? It was first and foremost, normalize it, right? Hey, we're working on the driver right now, not the car. And that's normal. And parents, I've had a lot of very successful parents, they don't share that vulnerability. They often portray that, yeah, my life's perfect, right? Like, my life's just, I don't have any issues and stuff that I work on and don't doubt. That's not true. We all have those things. Share those and be vulnerable. That's what I do in a first session. Yeah, I struggled with these things, and I still do at times, right? We still have things and limiting beliefs that come up. And then it's giving them some time to reflect and share about, well, what is the thoughts, the feelings, what are the blocks, and what might be those limiting beliefs, and how can we regain perspective so we can come out of it stronger? So, like I said, we'll be having more courses and things that maybe help walk parents through that, because it's not like it's just like, oh, just pick a button and everything resets and shifts. Like, we have a thing called the reset routine. It's this process of engaging and understanding what our limiting beliefs are, and that there's a bit of a process. So, but a lot of times, depending on where a parent is with their child and the age, they might not be that willing to share anymore. And so you have to, it's, you know, it doesn't matter what you say and ask if they're not in a state of willing to share. And we teach a lot about crucial conversations, which is about building trust in a safe environment first. And that's why normalizing it was kind of a big first step there. And kind of like, hey, and then if not, don't press and come back later when it is a good time. And so those would be my two.
Yeah, no, that's great advice.
Not well defined, but
first steps.
Elaborated points.
Those first steps, that's pretty solid. Yeah. I'm like,
Those are incredible. And I think too, you know, the biggest thing I'm taking away from all of this, Cassidy, and there's a lot, so it's a lot that I'm going to have to keep thinking about, but the normalizing piece is huge. Letting people know that being vulnerable is a strength, that having the conversation is important, and you know, it is reminding them that the driver is more important than just the car. Like Daryl said, you might have a shady driver and a great car, but you also might have a great driver and an okay car, which is even better. Yeah. So thank you. This has been incredible, and I'm excited to see what you're going to do from here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to get to share with other like-minded people, and I think that's a lot of what life's about, is connecting with other people. And when you think about athletes, it's connecting and being vulnerable, and just often taking that first step. It's like, yeah, no, I'm willing to do these things is huge. So whether, you know, conversations like this or listening to a podcast all have an impact. So I appreciate the work you guys are doing. Thank you.
You know, and we always say you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if one player in the team's not doing well, or one coach or one parent, everything's going to crumble. So it's really important that everyone brings each other up.
Exactly.
Awesome. Cassidy, so grateful for you being on today, buddy. That you like a well of knowledge here, and everyone's going to be like, I need to get a hold of that guy. I know, because that's what's going on right now. There's a lot of people could use your services right now. Looking forward to hearing and seeing where you're going with all this. Thanks, guys. And on that note, just go play. If you like this, share this with your friends. Take care. Just go play.